here with Eric Asp and Alec Seifert from Kent State in Ohio. And last year, about a year ago, Eric presented at the Collegiate Staff Conference, this Project Aspen. And Eric, I guess I just want to hand it off to you and just ask you to share maybe a little bit of a reminder of what Project Aspen was, and then maybe a bit of a timeline of what's happened since Shark Tank to get us up to speed.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we were super excited when we kind of went through that process to get ready for the Shark Tank segment. I think honestly that did something in our church even before we started doing anything, because it got the creative juices flowing, got us thinking about how to accelerate church planting in our region. And so the concept was we wanted to take the imagery, the natural imagery of an aspen grove, and kind of apply that to Northeast Ohio collegiate ministry. And aspens are kind of a really unique species of tree where they have seeds, but actually most of the way that the aspens spread is through their root systems. And they send out runners to different parts of the forest where it'll poke up in a new spot and kind of test out the climate, the conditions. Is there enough moisture? Is there enough sunlight? And if there is, it just keeps growing. You get a new aspen tree that's still connected by the same root system, but it's also its own distinct tree. And if it kind of pops up in this other part of the forest and it's not ideal conditions, it might grow into this little stunted kind of bush or brush kind of thing, or it might just die. And we figured, how could we do that in our area? Because we have I think it's 50 or 60 different institutes of higher learning within a 1 hour radius of Kent, Ohio. And so we were like, how could we put some of that natural imagery to work in checking out opportunities in Akron, Canton, Cleveland, Youngstown, this Northeast Ohio area. And we came up with the idea of an internship program where we kind of have paid interns go and be those runners, those little aspen sprouts coming up in a new place and seeing what the conditions are. And so we got enough funding to plan for 4 internships, and we decided we wanted to spread those out, 1 per semester for the next 2 years, to kind of give us a place to see and experiment and try it on for size, and then go someplace else and kind of start the process again. So we, over the winter break last year, we started an application process. We invited a number of students to kind of submit ideas for where they would go and how they would approach the project. And in the end, we decided our first Aspen project internship was going to be to Youngstown State University, about 45 minutes east of Kent. And we were going to go with Alec Seifert, who was a junior business student at Kent at the time, and see what God would do through that. So that's kind of the process we went through. And then Alec got to do about 10 weeks of that internship before COVID shut things down, changed the way the end of the internship worked. But I think substantially, it accomplished what we wanted it to do. We learned what we wanted it to teach us.
So Alec, you put together the proposal for Youngstown State, if I'm understanding that correctly?
Yes, it was. Eric ended up doing a lot of the research as for like the universities in the surrounding area, but I remember he kind of helped me in giving me some I guess leeway to kind of choose what prospect in the surrounding region was most I guess interesting, or kind of I felt like there was a calling there. So, but yeah, I think that was initially a decision we kind of made together, but he let me lead a little bit. So yeah.
Could you share, Alec, just a little bit about kind of what captured your heart and imagination about this project, about going to another school for a little bit of time, even while you're a student at Kent State?
Yeah, for sure. I think right now I'm thinking back to the time when AJ Ozanich actually shared with me this vision for a project that Eric had kind of started thinking about even before it received any funding. But he was just so excited, as he always is, about church planting and this mission of God, right? To just go. And we were working out one day, and he and he was like, "Dude, what about this idea?" And I think he really kind of shared his excitement with me, and it kind of started to reach my heart that, like, yeah, this is a ministry. H2O at Kent State is a ministry that reached my heart in a very unique way, and it was something I'm hopeful a church plant will be able to do on another university's campus. And so going to Youngstown was just a really exciting prospect for me, just because there's mission work to do in Youngstown. There's mission work being done there, but I think the vision was just people need the gospel, and sending out this route is a potential start of something really great. I think that's kind of the vision that was shared with me, and that I was really excited to take part in. So yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Could you guys share sort of, I heard there's the pitch part, but what did it look like to then get Alec on the ground? Like, what sort of preparation was done? What sort of transitions were made? Maybe Eric, you want to start, and then Alec, you want to jump in from your perspective?
Yeah. So we had Alec go through a process of planning and preparing. We had him choose a staff guide. So his staff guide was AJ, to kind of be someone to be a part of that process with him. And we took some of the demographic research that I had done, and that was helpful in just determining, which campus we were going to choose. But we're like, what days, what's your schedule going to look like? How are you going to use your hours? You're getting paid an hourly rate to do this internship. So how are you going to use those hours? And so Alec put together a plan that had him going to Youngstown 2 days a week. And he would drive together. I think most times he was able to bring somebody else along with him. Like, AJ went with him a number of times. I went with him a few times. Some other students were brought along in the process, other staff people. And it was designed to be this place. You go to Youngstown and you start building relationships with students, and just start striking up conversations with the people who worked at the Jamba Juice and the Student Center at Youngstown State, and you start to just share the gospel with people where you get the opportunity to do that. And then also to try and make connections with other ministry leaders in the area to get a sense, hey, what's the climate here? Is this a good fit? Is this a good opportunity? So yeah, it was that was the proposal process, was just kind of figuring out how many days a week, which days of the week, who are you going to bring with you, and how are you going to use your time?
Very cool. Alec, before going to you, Eric, what were some of you mentioned the demographic research, like what were some of the things you guys were keying on that really said, okay, Youngstown's where we want to take our first shot at this?
Yeah, well, we honestly want to take a shot at a lot of different opportunities. So we did demographics research just to figure out which institutes are how big each school is. Are they public? Are they private? What other kinds of ministry presence is already in that space? How far is it from Kent? Those sorts of things. So what we liked about Youngstown was that it's a pretty large school. Like, of the Northeast Ohio schools, Kent's the biggest. Probably close second is Cleveland State and Akron, but Youngstown is then next. It's definitely one of those top 5 largest institutions. The state school, we have a pretty well established model for becoming a student organization at a state school, and we know how that works in Ohio. So I think it felt to us like there was some familiarity that was appealing about Youngstown. But then there were some new dynamics because it was a higher commuter population. So that was something that was intriguing to us to try and figure out. And it was just a different town. That Youngstown has a very distinct vibe, a distinct ethos that we actually really like. Like, people who come from Youngstown love Youngstown. And we see that because they come to Kent State and they talk about Youngstown all the time. And so we knew that already, and felt like, yeah, that's kind of a key ingredient. That could be a really cool thing to try and tap into. But the hope is Alec was going to be our first shot at a large state school in the area, and then probably the second one was going to be going to a private school like a Baldwin Wallace or a Walsh in Canton, and get more of a feel for what a private school would be like. And those would be way smaller. and would have some of their own challenges and their own opportunities too.
Al, can you just share from your perspective what it was like to make that transition? It sounds like also you're still a student at Kent State during this time, yeah? So you're
That's
still
correct.
studying, and okay. So can you just kind of share what that was like to begin that and take it from
Yeah.
there?
No, Eric mentions a bunch of good things. Actually, the first week of the project, even the first it was Tuesdays, Thursdays ended up being, but Tuesday we went and visited Bolden Wallace because it was a place that on the list we kind of there were so many exciting places. I don't know. There's a lot to say about this really, but like and there were so many kind of exciting prospects for like where time could be spent that it was almost. I think there was a challenge in itself to just kind of narrow down this exciting list that Eric had kind of presented me. But Bolden Wallace and Youngstown, I think both stuck out for very unique reasons. Bolden Wallace was a place that I visited and hopes to go actually. And I remember not going because I think there was just a lack of spiritual presence, I think is kind of how I would describe it. Obviously the Spirit is working there, but I think in a way of lack of institutional kind of like church and opportunity for a young believer, I think like me, to kind of grow faith. So I think I felt really called to go there. But when AJ and I went, we just ran into some, like Eric was saying, kind of unique challenges and unique things. It ended up being Youngstown that was decided. As for the question though, yeah, it was initially just so much excitement. I love, like, that's the word that really comes to mind when I think about kind of initial Aspen transition. It got definitely hard for me. And as a student, and eventually just, there's a lot of learning and growth, I think, in that. But like, yeah, so initially the transition was so much excitement to kind of be doing something that really motivated me and challenged me at the same time outside of doing school, which I think back to that semester it was kind of just a bit of a drag. So it was really something to look forward to amidst the week. Yeah, I feel like that kind of pretty accurately describes how I felt about it and how that transition went for me personally and with the church.
So what, can you guys just share some stories? Like how did that process go? I mean, I heard like, it sounded like you were just on campus just to pretty much just meet people and just talk with people and just kind of see like where those would go. It almost sounds like a free flowing environment rather than like, you may have had like a way of looking at things, but just like, all right, I'm just going to talk. And if someone is willing to listen, we're going to keep talking. Is that kind of how it went? Or can you share just stories? Strategy might be too strict of a term, but just what was your approach?
I feel like I can answer that unless you have anything to say immediately, Eric.
Go for it, man.
I am. I mean, I just think there was a lot of, yeah, it was just approaching people. Like sometimes there would be times where I would approach somebody and just be like, hey, do you want to grab lunch? Or like just very blunt. Sometimes it was very blunt and sometimes it didn't go over well, but sometimes it did. And we got to meet up with kind of just a range of students and just kind of hear some stories. Some of those stories or some of those times really went far, and we got to hear about home life and kind of like church presence back home and church presence on campus and really effective communication between us and the students. And then sometimes it was just, no, I don't want to talk to you. But I think that's a good word or a good phrase to use is kind of free flowing. It wasn't, I mean, like we came at it with some strategy, right? And there was a lot of guidance from Eric and AJ kind of as to how to approach this. Oh, Eric, you're going to have to share your 4 eyes again. But that was kind of the mentality going into it. Actually, maybe you should share is it 4 eyes or 3 eyes?
Yeah, 4 eyes. Yeah. Initiation, interaction, invitation, and I'm missing one, which that would have been good for me to review that before we had this call.
Me too. I should have been on top of that.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's you got to start a conversation. You just got to start from scratch and initiate with people, and it's breaking the tendency to just kind of remain in place like there's stasis until somebody takes the initiative and kind of shakes that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there's interaction. So it's just kind of talking about their world and finding out what's going on, and getting this sense of, am I understanding this environment correctly? Am I listening to people? What am I going to learn from this environment? And then there's the invitation part of it is like, hey, can I share the gospel with you? Or can I tell you about this Bible study that's happening on campus? And kind of listening along the way and getting the space to kind of join in. Oh, the fourth one is intercession. Yeah, so it's just like spending time praying in between the process. So just making it this ongoing prayerful exercise where you're like saying, Holy Spirit, lead us to the right person that you have for us, and then go into that.
Awesome. Alec, were those things that are in your comfort zone, something they kind of grow into and like just receive a lot of courage? Like how did that kind of line up with how God's wired you?
That's a great question. I would say that it didn't really. I think it's something that I had a lot of excitement for, like I said already, but I tend to be introverted in nature, and my first reaction is not to just go and confront people kind of either randomly or kind of just like be like, yeah, like Spirit lead me to a person. I think that's not my default or what I grew up doing. So it definitely proved a challenge. But I felt encouraged, especially by the people I went with. And lots of times the people I went with had already had a lot of evangelism experience. I mean, like obviously like Eric and AJ and other staff members. And even when it was just a student that would come with me, it was going in pairs. I mean, even in scripture, we see a lot about going in pairs. But yeah, for my wiring, it was definitely a challenge, and it was out of my comfort zone. I remember sometimes I would have to stand around a corner and hype myself up and be like, Lord, be with me, and then kind of walk around like with a smile on my face, ready to go, which is just all part of the experience. I think the Lord was using every single bit of that. So definitely a challenge, but a good challenge at that.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. That's just real and honest, and I appreciate that a ton. I'm guessing a lot of even like really seasoned missionaries in collegiate can relate with that still, that there's sometimes you just need, Lord, like, give me your energy. So I appreciate you sharing that, Alec. So what, I want to honor your guys' time here. What are some of the things like, you're just like, okay, these were like the really big wins. Like, do you have any of those stories that you could share that just like, man, like, yeah, after I asked God to be with me or lead me to this person, I have this story? Or what are the things that just were really encouraging?
I was going to tell a story. There was one day that I was scheduled to go together with Alec to ISU, and we were going to kind of explore the space. And kind of at the last minute, I invited another student, Aaron, to come along with us. And so the three of us drove to Youngstown together. I think we started by going to this artisanal hot dog shop downtown Youngstown, and just had a really good conversation, just even about what God was doing in Alec's heart, and what God's been doing in my heart, and what Aaron was kind of observing as we've been having a lot more conversations about church planting. Honestly, I think something I noticed throughout the whole internship, but even in that conversation, just a way that God was nudging Alec towards a career in full-time ministry. God was nudging Aaron towards a career in full-time ministry, and both of those were really big wins in my view, just to even get God's heart moving in them. I'm not sure that they're going to be church planters in Youngstown, but just even to know that church planting is just a part of our culture and part of making disciples. I think that was really cool. And then after we had lunch, we went on campus and we went to the Butler Art Institute or whatever, like it's this really old art building in the middle of campus. And we just spent some time praying in there. And it really was kind of that interceding for the campus and just saying, hey, God, could you just point us to people who need to have some interaction today? And then as soon as we finished that time of prayer and we walked out into the nearest building outside of the art building, we ended up in this hour and a half long conversation with this guy who was completely unexposed to any kind of faith system. You know, he was very much unengaged, and yet he was so glad to talk with us, and really shared a lot, I think, very Youngstown problems and Youngstown issues that were going on in his heart, and was ready to receive just our good news of hope in Jesus. And he didn't pray with us, like there wasn't like this dramatic conversion moment, but it was like this really cool conversation. Like, this is fertile soil for the gospel. It made us, I think, more convinced that Youngstown is a viable possibility for where we would send a church plant. And again, we're not sure that that's where God's leading us in terms of church planting, but it's a very real possibility. So just to get, you know, two guys thinking about full-time ministry, to get one campus that's like a pretty clear, good confirmation that there's spiritual need and there's opportunity for collegiate church planting in our region. Those were all huge wins that I think that's what I think of globally for the whole internship experience that Alec had. It was just great wins in those ways, and I think big possibility for the future.
It's cool. Yeah, I want to get to the future here in a second, kind of dreams and next steps. But Alec, I don't know if you have any other, just a personal story or something that you just want to share that God really just gave you in this process.
Absolutely. Yeah, Eric, that's a great story. And I, as you were telling it, I was kind of replaying it in my head, and I love what the Spirit was doing there. And I'm also thinking about another time I was down there with another staff member, and we were just kind of, we were walking the campus and praying, and it was, I mean, something that we did a lot just down there. But this time specifically, I think I was just praying for like some vision, I think kind of for what it would look like to be at Youngstown as a church. You know, where would a church meet? What would a church do in Youngstown? And I think we just wandered into two specific spaces. And Eric, I remember showing you one of them, I think, but just all it was just a big room. One of them was a lecture hall, where we actually ended up meeting a teacher and getting a lot of information about kind of the atmosphere, with even kind of staff of the university, and how they felt about Youngstown and how they felt about the relationship with the president. There was a lot of good stuff we talked about then, but even just after she left, she was like, yeah, this is really exciting. I'm glad you guys are here. You know, it was a very encouraging time where me and the staff member, we got to meet, find out a lot of information. And then I looked at this room and it felt really homey. Like it was really not homey, comforting. I don't know. It was like this place where I really could envision just a church of collegiate network kind of being. And it was so encouraging. I remember leaving that day feeling like the Lord could use any space at any time. But that one specifically felt like, man, I would love to see new Youngstown students and potentially city members just coming together, walking in, smiling. And obviously this is before now, but just a lot of vision for kind of even like flow of how like it just looked, I could see a Sunday morning happening there. And I remember that being a really exciting time, because obviously we weren't there yet and that wasn't happening, but it was just, I think something the Spirit was kind to kind of reveal to my heart that this is how it works. You know, like he all of this is his. So I think that was, there wasn't as much personal conversation there, but just a lot of vision casting. And I think that's a story I think about that really encouraged me about this trip. So
yeah. I hear eyes to see. Like it's like this, like God opened my eyes to see, and that's really cool. So we'll start with Alec, and then we'll go to Eric. Just kind of what's next? Like what are you, like, maybe personally going forward? Like Alec, it sounds like there's a thought, or maybe you're moving towards staff. Toward like, can you share a little bit about that? But that may not be the biggest takeaway. And then Eric, after he finishes up, just kind of share like what's next for Project Aspen. How are you guys thinking about it? How's it even changing a little bit as the landscape of 2020s look different? And we'll close out with those things. So Alec, yeah, maybe just what did you learn? What's kind of next? Even if it's not directly related, what do you kind of feel like the Lord's like launching you into?
That's a great question. Very personally, I am finishing an application to be on staff today. So, so that's very real in the flesh right now. That's something the Lord's doing actively, and which is exciting and good. And I'm thankful for. And then I think as far as just Aspen and kind of what I learned, where that's going in the future, I'm hopeful. It's something to cling to for hope, because it comes from the Lord. It's something that we're pursuing Him by pursuing church planting. It's a selfless thing, and as selfish as we tend to be as humans, it's us doing our well. It's the Spirit using us, and so I'm personally excited to see what Aspen project turns into, with like you said, this new landscape, and I'm really thankful and glad I got to kind of be a pioneer in terms of what this project looks like. But I'm excited for what it looks like in the coming years, really, truly. Just because I know that I learned a lot. Personally, I know that the church learned a lot. And that, I think it's going to be really good. And so I'm trying to think how to wrap this up. It was a great experience. Learned a lot. I hopeful to be on staff and potentially church plant. I'm not sure personally where that's at, but the church at H2O Kent is definitely moving in that direction, and that's an exciting thing. So just hope and excitement. I mean, kind of what I started off the project with is still there and has probably even grown. So I think that's kind of my wrap up for that question there for you.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, so I mean, we knew that church planting was in our DNA, and we knew that the Aspen Project was going to be a way to continue cultivating that. We did not know that there was going to be a global pandemic that would shut it down 10 weeks into the first internship. So like there's been a bit of a pause when it comes to officially what the Aspen Project is doing. We've got all the funding banked, prepared for that second internship, and we're ready to make that happen when conditions allow. We didn't feel like we were ready for that this fall because of the state of COVID in the area. So some of that feels like it's on pause, but strangely enough, I feel like our process of moving towards church planting has accelerated through COVID ministry. And it's been this really interesting process. I think it's related to the Aspen Project, but it's also separate, where just because of this virus that's going around, we needed to take the big gathering that we would do on Sundays in the Bowman Hall lecture hall, and we needed to regionalize that. And so we've got 7 different regions of our church that are gathering for worship on Sundays, so that the numbers can stay smaller. They can meet outside. They can be more mobile. And what that's actually felt like is like a church plant feels. Like the idea of somebody who's maybe not a super experienced teacher is going to have to teach every week. Somebody who's not the best guitar player is going to try and plunk out some songs to lead a church in worship. And just like the pastoral work is multiplied by 7, and the administrative work is multiplied by 7. And it's kind of like been this thing that forced us out of our comfort zone and made us realize, we're more ready than we thought we were for church planting. And so we're really seriously looking that direction. I'm hopeful, prayerful that will be within the next year and a half, that we'll be sending out a team somewhere. Youngstown's very much in play for one of those places that we would go to, but considering other places too. And hopeful that whenever COVID lifts, we could use the Aspen Project to kind of continue advancing that effort and giving us some eyes in a new place.
Awesome. Oh man, I feel encouraged just by hearing all those things. And I've heard other stories too of, in some ways, this pandemic has slowed things down, but in other ways, there's been a catalyst for rapid acceleration. And it's beautiful to see and just know that that's what God's kingdom is working too. So thank you guys for sharing about this. Alec, thanks for just taking time out of, it's a big day applying for this application. I'm guessing you got some school going on too. And guys, thanks just for helping out and sharing the story, and just excited to see how it encourages other people just to see how God might give them eyes to see for what they could step into as well. So I just appreciate it a ton today.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.